We have covered way too many rogue builds this season, and it's a lot to keep track of. So the question becomes, which ones are actually the best? Well, damn, let's find out, shall we? But first, what makes a good build? Great question, Mr. Paragaming. This is how I think regarding this. First off, the infernal hordes are a thing. They need to get smashed with ease, and we need to be able to gather a shit ton of ether. That's one factor. Secondly, the pit, because some people actually enjoy the pit, and dealing big dick damage, pushing the highest of pit levels. And finally, ease of play. Because while some builds may be bonkers for the GigaChad gamers, the average 39,000 hemorrhoid dad gamer may hard struggle playing it. This also goes for gearing. If it requires a buttload of gear, then it's only playable for the elite gamers. Alright, so that's the criteria. I also need to mention two disclaimers here. First one being that all 5 builds on this list is capable of clearing everything in the game, including tier 140 pits or so, along with T8 hordes. So depending on what game modes you prefer, any of these builds will indeed be perfect. And secondly, timestamps are in the description, because to make it as easy as possible for you, I have the actual build guides into this one video. This made this video fucking enormous. Not unlike something else, if you know what I'm saying. But you're not forced to swap videos if you find a build you like. Just use the timestamps and skip around, my friend. Okay, let's start with rank number 5. Here we have ourselves a lovely pen shot build. But not just any pen shot build, the Andariel one. Because Andariel's basically carries every goddamn build this season, and that's just a fact. So what makes this build so damn good? Well, let's go through the scoring one by one. For crushing the hordes, this is the best rogue build in the game, and this is due to the humongous amounts of AoE this build provides. And why is that? Well shit, the Andariel helmet requires 2 things to bust out poison novas: a massive lucky hit and a lot of hits. Pen shot has both, a high lucky hit chance, and it also hits a buttload of enemies due to both penetrating them and splitting all over the fucking place via the trick shot aspect. So by spamming pen shot, you're just clearing the entire screen no problem. On top of that, if you combine the build with the Shroud of Kanduras, then you have an easy 1000 plus ether, regardless of how shit of a player you are. You can also utilize this to make you immortal, simply by spamming Dark Shroud and having it on your bars. And why can you spam it? Well damn, because this build utilizes exposure. Due to the high lucky hit and damaging enemies via our traps, you can easily just keep resetting all cooldowns no problemo. Alright, and are there any downsides? Yes, otherwise this build would be rank 1, wouldn't it? The main downside here is the lack of single target damage. To gain enough single target damage, you would have to use the Umbra Cucks to start splitting the lucky hits and gain more big dam. But that would in turn make the build worse in AoE, so it's a rough choice. Now, while I'm talking about low single target damage, I'm still talking about 5 billions DPS or so, but compared to the other builds on this list, that is low. The great thing, though, is that in the hordes, you can gather the enemies. And what happens if you gather the bosses and you have enormous AoE damage? Damn right, you blow them all up at once. Easy peasy. You can even swap to the Umbra Cucks in the hordes for more boss damage. But of course, this is not possible in the pit. So the build is getting 4 out of 10 there. For the final part, the ease of play and gearing, this build is going in the middle of the pack. This is due to the requirement of uber uniques, as with most Andariel builds, and spending a fuck ton of energy. If you don't have starless skies, then you'll also be forced to rock the starlight aspect, and that's a feels bad moment. But if you have all of these, then you're good to go. Probably a 5 out of 10 right here. Overall, this build receives the final score 19 out of 30, which is pretty damn good. Want to play it? Keep watching or skip to the next build. Let's check out the gear and aspects, shall we? Starting us off, we're of course rocking the Andariels, because, well, it's pretty damn good. For masterworking Prio, it depends on your gear and current attack speed, as you're looking to gain 100% on your gear. For Tiddy protection, it's either Tyrael's Might and masterworking damage reduction for the typical Uber setup, or Shroud of Khanduras for the immortal pixel pulling setup, and masterwork the Dark Shroud ranks. It's then time for the gloves. There are but one pair of gloves in the game that exists, and that is the Fate Fisters. This is just too hecking good, man, as we'll get a buttload of lucky hit here. For second Prio, try to look for a decent crowd control roll, as we'll use the creeping death aspect. When it comes to the Pantaloonies, this is the only item apart from the Khandura's chest that will be different. For the regular Uber setup, it's the Umbrous aspect all the way, baby. This is to spawn Dark Shrouds, and makes you not fucking die El Mao. For the Immortal setup, however, you will be actively pressing Dark Shrouds and having them on your bars, so then you'll just grab the Concussive Strikes aspect instead. It's in the planner, my man or woman, check it out. Either way though, second win ranks are just too fucking good, man or woman, so get that. It will provide you with massive barriers. For the sneakers, the Noxious Ice aspect is just fucking bonkers. Other than that though, there are two extremely important stats here. Do you see them? No? Then open your goddamn eyes, because we want attacks, reduce evade cooldown, and we must get chance to freeze. Yes, that's a must. Either you need to have it on your sneakers, your pantaloonies, or both. This is to trigger the Frigid Finesse passive quickly, as you'll otherwise lose a lot of damage in the hordes. For staggered bosses, it doesn't matter as you always gain all crowd control bonuses, but it speeds up the regular packs of enemies a lot. And for the weapon, we're rocking Creeping Death aspect. This is just godly. Not only does it grant 80% big dam on bosses, but for each crowd control you have up, you gain a damage bonus in the hordes. And this synergizes well with the Fate Feisters, as they allow you to gain random crowd controls. Other than that though, you grab Penetrating Shotcast twice on your weapons, along with Dark Shroud damage tempers. The latter has to be at 100%. For the other aspects, the Trickshot aspect is just massive, as it triggers Andariel Novas all over the place, and the Retribution aspect is also godly. By knocking enemies down, we instantly gain a 30% big dam bonus. And how do we knock enemies down? Well, that's rather beautiful, as Penetrating Shot instantly knocks enemies down with enough energy. Just lovely. When it comes to the amulet, you'll want to focus on Frigid Finesse and Alchemical Advantage, but that's expensive as fuck, so having Malice, Exploit, or Unstable Elixirs is also good. Either way, start tempering Innovation ranks, as Pen Shot is expensive in terms of resources. You'll also grab the Bursting Venoms aspect here. This can trigger lucky hits as well, and the amount of lucky hits are substantial for sure. Another important stat that you need is Lucky Hit, to make enemies vulnerable. I'm currently lacking it, so I'm forced to use Exploit in the Paragons. You don't want to do that, so be a good sport and make sure that you have it on your ring, will you? And for the final ring, the Starless Skies is just goated. Don't have it? That's fine. We slap on the Starlight aspect. This also brings me into the next topic. How the fuck do we actually solve resources? Because last time I checked, that's pretty important to actually play a build. So let's talk about it, shall we? For starters, you'll need either the Starlight aspect or Starless Skies. Secondly, you want to temper Innovation ranks. And lastly, you need to actually hit enemies. If you do all that, then you can't tell me you run out of resources. Because then, you're either trying to kill the wall, or you've been smoking something. Either way, there's an additional way of gaining resources, and that's Poison Imbuement. Every time you use it, you gain resources. And by combining it with the Bursting Venoms aspect, whenever that one procs, you gain unlimited poison imbuments. And what do you get? if you have permanent poison imbuement, and it in turns grants you energy. Damn right, unlimited energy, lovely. And what specialization are we using, my friends? Correct, that's the preparation passive. So let's just check how it works for the shit newbies out there. Whenever you drop your death trap, you'll reset your cooldowns and gain damage reduction. To then reset the dead at P traps, we're rocking exposure. Whenever an enemy is affected by your trap, you simply need to attack it for your trap cooldowns to reset. This does, however, require a lucky hit. But fortunate for us, we're stacking a buttload of lucky hit, so it's triggering all the goddamn time. This is just lovely, especially if you're running the Immortal setup, because you can keep constantly resetting the Dark Shroud cooldown, and whenever you press it, you gain immunity. Hell yeah. Oh shit, I just realized the time. It's skill tree fucking clock. And you know it, my man or woman? We start off doing our best to avoid looking at the basic skills, because those can suck a dick. It's then time for an actual skill. Pen shot. We don't care at all about the damage it deals, rather we want enhanced pen shot for the additional novas, and advanced to instantly knock down enemies for the retribution aspect and the malice passive. After that, we grab sturdy as to not fucking dial Mao and pick up some lovely agility skills. Shadow Step is used for mobility and unstoppable, but we're also granted a whopping 20% damage reduction, which we can keep up with ease. Also, don't forget the passives along with unstable elixirs here, as it's a lovely damage bonus as long as you keep chugging some potions. Next up are the subterfuge skills, where we grab some lovely passives, poison trap for the additional damage and being a trap skill, and smoke grenade for big hecking dam. Dark Shroud is also massive important, being able to grant a solid 50% damage reduction or so. In the imbuement skills, we have poison imbuement and enhanced for the lovely energy region. Grab all the passives you can find here. Alchemical Advantage and Frigid Finesse are also what you want on your amulet, as they're just fucking bonkers. But Frigid Finesse is the most goated of the two, that's for sure. In the ultimates, we have some lovely energy region, which you'll need on your ring and amulet, along with Second Wind for a buttload of barrier and Alchemist's Fortune. And don't forget Death Trap either, seeing as this build won't work without it LOL. And finally, the key passive. You know what we're rocking, and that is exposure for the cooldown resets. Great job, friends. Skill tree complete. Drop a sub for fuck's sake, it won't hurt. And we'll check out the Paragons right about now. In the starting board, we're rocking Control. This, along with pretty much every goddamn rogue build in the game, mainly gets its damage during crowd control, and this one is no exception. We then go to pick up Cheap Shot, along with the damage reduction nodes right here, and Socket Fluidity for Big Dam and boosting the nearby damage reduction. After that, we want the No Witness Legendary node, as it grants us 40% Big Dam every time we press an ultimate skill, as long as we also grab up all the ultimate skill damage we can find. These nodes, along with the gems that we're rocking, gets the node to roughly 40%. We also want Tracker for Big Dam. Down here is also where you find the Eldritch Bounty node for Big Dam. But grab it last, seeing as we're not utilizing any rare nodes here. Instead, go up to grab the Deadly Ambush node, which is bugged and still grants damage on non-crits, and Socket Bane for massive damage. And for final board, we're grabbing Exploit Weakness and picking up whatever defensives we can find, along with Socketing Canny. Well, damn son, Paragon's complete. What do you say we go get hecking good now, huh? Hell yeah. When it comes to gaming, it varies depending on which version you play. This one is easy as hell though, and it's the standard edition. What you do here is basically hold down pen shot. Just make sure that you actually hit stuff, or else you'll run out of energy El Mao. You want to use your poison imbuement as frequently as possible, and stand in the giant pools of snot that spawns from time to time on the ground via the bursting venoms aspect, seeing as it grants you infinite imbuements. When it comes to the other skills, you're mainly spamming Poison Trap and Death Trap on cooldown in the hordes. For bossing, you can do it every few seconds. The remaining two skills is a judgment call. You can spam Shadow Step if you want and hop around like a coked-up squirrel. But if you're a boomer, you may just want to chill out and use it mainly when you're crowd-controlled. And when it comes to the smoke grenade, it's only used on rough elites and bosses. Okay, and what about the Immortal Shroud of Kandura's version? Well, it's just ever so slightly more difficult, but more fun and gathers more ether. Here you are, ditching either smoke grenade or poison trap, whichever you prefer, as it doesn't really matter, and instead slot Dark Shroud onto your bars. What you need to know here is that the cooldown of Dark Shroud starts as the immunity is ended from the Shroud of Kandura's. So right as the cooldown starts, you want to pop a death trap to reset it, and you have your immunity again. The other part is gathering up enemies. The skill tree is changed ever so slightly to make room for more evades, so you both reset your evade whenever you attack a dazed enemy from the skill tree, and well, just attack enemies due to the attack's reduce evade cooldown on your boots. Dazing mainly comes from the Fate Feisters, so it's a bit of RNG, but all good. You'll then run around evading whenever there are large packs of enemies that you want to gather and blow them up with ease. Just lovely. If you replaced your poison trap rather than smoke grenade, then you can also throw one of those bad boys onto the large packs of enemies unless you just delete them with one button. Okay, that's lovely. What's left? Bossing, of course. Funnily enough, I said earlier that this build was worse than both Puncture and Barrage on bossing, but there's one exception, and that is the Hordes, where we spend most of our time. Because if you manage to gather the 3 bosses together, then you can actually just blow them all up at the same time due to the humongous amounts of synergies you get during AoE. So when this is done, this build is also the strongest for bossing LMAO. Another tip I can give here is to swap to the Umbra Cuck. And why is that? Well, by utilizing the Umbra Cucks and spawning a totem when you throw out a smoke grenade or poison trap, you get one additional target you can spawn poison novas from. But that's up to you if you want to try hard. I typically can't be bothered. Alright friends, that's all for this one. Time for another amazing build.
Противник на северо-востоке! Противник! Северо-запад! Противник на юге! Они атакуют с юго-востока! Зависим! Противник на юго-западе!
It's the BRR Rapid Fire Rogue build. Not only do you get to urinate onto your enemies here, but you're at the same time blowing them up. This build is so goddamn insane that it's been hitting for up to 150 billion damage. Yes, you heard correctly. Is that balanced? I don't know. You tell me. The reasons this is even possible is, well, honestly, there's just too many things to list. Everything about this build has just been getting buffs after buffs. But what you need to know are basically that the build is mainly carried via 3 factors. First one being the Scoundrel's Kiss. It turns rapid fire into a urination and in turn blows shit up. Second being the Precision Key passive. With how easy it is to gain crit damage along with a buttload of crit damage from the Sky Hunter, our damage now just skyrockets. And finally, the Cowl of the Nameless, along with trick attacks and unstable elixirs. All of these passives are just fucking bonkers, granting hundreds of additional damage. Now this helmet is mainly used for pushing though, as using it forced us to cry in defensives. Due to this, I've also made several different versions, since I made the original guide that you can check out. Big stonks and speed is what we'll cover. We also have tanky, which we can utilize unless we want to hecking dial Mao, and pushing, which has a buttload of damage. Okay, starting us off, let's do the rankings in order. And first out are the Hordes. This is the main reason this build is not rank 1, because this build does have the highest damage of all builds with quite a large margin, but the AoE is just mid, and that's mainly due to us utilizing combo points along with urinating in small areas. This can partially be solved if you decide to use Shroud of Kanduras, not unlike the other builds, but it's not ideal for this build. So realistically, I've been averaging around 700 ether with this build in decent runs up to a maximum of 1000. That's pretty decent, I guess, but lower than the other builds for sure. Probably a 4 out of 10 here. Now where this build truly shines is the pit. This is by far the strongest pit pushing build for rogues, and the others are not even close. A Chinese guy has cleared a 158 with this build, which is just mad seeing as most people are playing an Ariel's this season. It's actually looking to be the best pit pushing in the game, only surpassed by the sorcerers. So if you want to push the pit, then this is the build for you. An easy 10 out of 10 right here. And finally, the ease of play. This is entirely up to you. Because if you want to push the highest of pits, then the build is difficult as hell. This is due to requiring fishing for the correct bosses and getting adds which you need for the trick attacks passive. It's also possible to do animation cancels to further boost your damage, but that shit's rough, man. On the other hand, though, if you're not going to push the highest of pits or do any of those annoying stuff, then the build is insanely easy. You simply shoot out 3 punctures, or Heart Seekers depending on which version you play, and then blow shit up via rapid fire. The damage this build has is just so high that you'll one-shot anything in the game and won't be required to try hard at all, LOL. But there are a few passives to keep track of still, and due to this, it's getting a 7 out of 10 for ease of play for a total of 20 out of 30 big dick points. Let's check out the gear and aspects now, shall we? Starting off, I recommend using Shako when you get it. As a starter, you can look for any random helmet that has cooldown reduction and slap on Aspect of Might. For titty protection, slap on the Umbrous aspect real good and get a buttload of Dark Shroud ranks. If you do this, I can assure you that your character will turn an immortal god with ease. We're also trying to temper dodge chance on our gear, and why is that? Because if we dodge, we get to keep our precious Dark Shroud stacks. And I don't know about you, but that's a hell yes for me. For the gloves, I'm looking to grab these and the new Cold Clip aspect. Now we're obviously not using basic skills for damage, but what we're after is the 20% big dam against frozen targets. It's also going to help us with staggering bosses a bunch, making the build even stronger. Now here's something important, so listen up, damn it. On the panties, you have 2 options. Either you go full big dick such as myself here, or you grab the assimilation aspect. Knowing this is important, as it's the easiest way to swap into some defensives if needed. It's also going to be massive if you temper the second wind here, seeing as it's changed in Season 5 and now grants us barrier. And by tempering it, we are saving precious skill slots to be used elsewhere. When it comes to the boots, there is but one thing that is mandatory, and that is that you grab attacks, reduce, evade, cooldown. And why is that? Well, shit. If you evade in between each rapid fire, you're gaining 30% more big dam. And I'd say that's pretty important. Other than that, though, we're prioritizing movement speed and slapping on the concussive strikes aspect. Next up, we have an interesting new item thrown into the mix, or well, reworked. The Sky Hunter is actually looking real solid this season, being buffed to the fucking moon, seeing as crit damage is going to be the most important stat in this build. And this one has a bunch of it along with a great aspect and chance to hit twice. Just a lovely piece, really. Either way, try to masterwork either the chance to hit twice or crit damage. Next we go for Aspect of Expectant. You can use either swords or daggers here, but daggers are preferred as they hit faster. On the final one, you're also going to temper Caltrop's size. And why not duration like previously? Because it has been bug fixed, obviously. All right, and finally we have the jewelry. The retribution aspect is just goated as fuck. And the amount of great passives we can get on the amulet now is just humongous. Like my... Wait, feels like I've done this joke before. Anyhow, Frigid Finesse is typically the strongest. Then it depends on what your playstyle is. Exploit is a safe bet, and Trick Attacks is supposedly double dipping. And I say supposedly because that's PTR information, so that could potentially be the strongest. Another important thing you need to know here is that you're going to need cold imbuement temper here, and then on the ring, which should preferably be master worked. With this, you should be able to spam that shit with ease. And for aspect, we're rocking the rapid aspect and scoundrel's giss. Well, shit. That's the gear and aspects done. Now let me just check something. Yeah, I was correct. It's indeed skill tree of fucking clock, and you know it, baby. Starting off, we're rocking puncture to generate our combo points along with an easy way of obtaining vulnerable on bosses. We then head straight on over to the core skills where find our beloved urinator. Also, grab enhanced rapid fire so we can gain advanced rapid fire afterwards. This skill is just fucking bonkers, and we need to keep spamming some evades between each urination due to this. Also, grab the defensives here as they are our main source of healing. We then go to the agility skills where we want basically everything. Shadow Step also got a massive buff, now generating damage reduction. This is also where we find enhanced caltrops, boosting our damage along with unstable elixir and tricks attacks. The latter two is new for the season and absolutely bonkers. Unstable elixir also means that you'll need to chug a potion every 10 seconds. In the subterfuge skills, we have a few lovely passives and Dark Shroud. In the pushing variant, you're also looking to grab Smoke Grenade here. In the imbuement skills, we want Cold Imbuement along with enhanced and mixed Cold Imbuement for that massive big damn bonus. We also have Frigid Finesse here, granting a whopping 10% big damn per rank against frozen enemies. And finally, the key passive. Precision is just massive, allowing us to gain a buttload of multiplicative damage from crit along with free crits in itself. Just lovely. All right, you still here? Just a safety precaution, in case I'm on a second monitor, here's a little surprise. Hell yeah. When it comes to the Paragon, there are more broken nodes and glyphs that we can possibly handle. Just bonker node after node. And starting off, we want Canny for the extra damage. We then go to the buffed tricks of the trade node, grab that, and socket the exploit glyph to instantly gain vulnerable. Up here, we also have Eldritch Bounty, which is an important node that we want to grab, last seeing, as there are no rare nodes up there. Instead, go to Deadly Ambush for the big dam and Socket Fluidity for, yeah, you guessed it, even more big dam. After that, we head on over to pick up Exploit Weakness and Socket Combat with ease. This is due to the buttload of crit damage it provides. We then want the Cheap Shot Legendary node, which also got buffed and is now usable on bosses, and we socket Control for a whopping 20% big fucking damn. And finally, Cunning Stratagem. And what the hell does this even do? Well, damn, it grants us additional arrows as we're urinating. That's what it does. We also find 10% all resistance here, helping us sort that shit out. Well, damn, will you look at that. Paragon successfully completed. Let's learn how to get hecking good, my friends. Both a blessing and a curse of this build is that you can actually make it better, but not being a shit newbie. Meaning a god gamer may actually push higher than the average one brain cell dad gamer out there if he actually tries. But that's also what makes it fun. First off, the standard rotation is 3 punctures, followed by popping Cold Imbuement and busting all over the place with rapid fire. On elites and bosses, though, we want to start using caltrops. Just drop that down and start blasting. Now this is where a bit of skill and finesse comes in. First, you want to either dash or shadow step roughly each 8 seconds to gain tricks of the trade buff. Secondly, you want to evade once every 5 seconds. You can also animation cancel the rapid fire if you evade just as you throw it out, but that may a bit too try hard, so fuck that. And finally, every 10 seconds you need to chug a potion, as you'll then gain the unstable elixir buff for Big Damn. If you do all of this, then you'll become the god gamer you were always meant to be. Here's the checklist for you. Alright, that's all for this one. Sub and stay shredded kings. For the next build, we have yet another Andariel's build. Shocker, huh? This time it's the Andariel puncture build. This build is just overall amazing and works exactly like the other builds via the Andariel helmet. A lot of lucky hit and attack speed is the name of the game, with a fuck bunch of damage to follow. By rocking puncture, we're able to send out 6 projectiles each time we cast, all of them having a high lucky hit chance and a buttload of attack speed, as you're able to utilize daggers for this build. There are a lot of different versions you can rock for this build, but my preferred version is via exposure. It's in fact my personal favorite when it comes to all the Andariel builds, and it's mainly due to being both insanely fun and insanely strong in the hordes. As you're able to constantly keep resetting your skills, you have Death Trap that can pull enemies in while at the same time keeping up all of your multipliers from the other skills. This build is also the one that synergizes the best with Shroud of Khanduras, as you'll need to be in melee range to blow shit up anyways, which is required to use this chest. And when it comes to the hordes, the build is just excellent. I could easily gather up 1,000 ether and more in a good run, but it lacks behind slightly in comparison to the ranged builds. And why is that? Well, shit, because having to be in melee range is annoying as hell. You're forced to shadow step or dash around to get close, wasting a lot of time. On top of that, Andariel's is a damage over time spell, meaning shit does not die instantly. That's annoying, and wastes precious time simply waiting for shit to die. Despite this though, the build is still achieving a strong 7 out of 10 here. It's solid, it's strong, and it's fun as hell in the hordes. The bosses just melts, and I've seen poison ticks up to 20 billion in non-optimal gear. Pretty good. When it comes to the pit, the build is also a solid choice there. Unfortunately, there are not a whole lot of players using it to push as high as possible here, so I'm lacking a bit of data and are forced to fall back on my own testing. And my own testing says it's pretty fucking good. With similar gear as with the other builds I've tested, it's falling in the top 3 category of builds here. The damage is just massive, and it's dealing substantial damage both with and without stagger phases, and it does not require a whole lot of fishing, seeing as we're not utilizing trick attacks like the physical damage dealers, and that's just massive for pushing. Due to this, it's a solid 8 out of 10. There are stronger builds for pushing, but not a whole lot of them, alright? And finally, we have ease of play. Honestly, this is one of the easier builds on this list. You're mainly just pressing whatever buttons you feel like pressing, and utilizing exposure makes the build so much easier. This is due to being able to reset your cooldowns before every stagger phase on bosses, and you'll be able to get your combo of skills just as you want them. Without exposure, this is just way harder. Now, if you don't use exposure, get fucked, I guess. But I'm doing it, and that's why it's getting an 8 out of 10 for ease of play. And why not higher? Well, damn, son. Because it does require a bit of gearing. And Ariel is an uber unique, and I'd also prefer if you grab the Starless Skies on top of that. But other than that, the build is fairly easy to gear for compared to some other builds. All in all, a build that is excellent in all content available. If you use this, I can promise you that you won't be disappointed. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's getting a 23 out of 30 rating. To fully appreciate the build, though, let's head on over to the gear and aspects. Starting us off, The only item you actually need is the Andariels. The masterworking Prio, though, depends entirely on your gear and if you actually give a shit about maxing out your gear. Because there are 2 attack speed caps in the game, which is annoying as hell. But in the description, you'll find a calculator. You then simply fill in the boxes, and ideally, you would get to 10 frames here for maximum damage, but 11 is fine as well. Drop by the Paragaming Discord if you need any advice on this. Next up is the chest. Check out this bad boy. If you don't have it, then you're going to slap on the Aspect of Might instead, and if you're rocking the Horde version, then Shroud of Konduras will be mandatory. For Tyraels, you want to masterwork the damage reduction. It's then time for the Fate Feisters, and here, the most important stats are Lucky Hit and the Crowd Control. And why is the Crowd Control important? Well, damn, my man, because it works with Creeping Death. The more different crowd controls, the better. This is also the reason you'll do more damage on elites than bosses. After that, you want a pair of pantaloonies as to not get cancelled. Second Wind is the godliest passive in the game, allowing us to double our health with ease using a barrier. Just lovely. In the Standard Edition, you'll then imprint the Umbrous Aspect to gain Dark Shroud, seeing that it's roughly 50% damage reduction. I'd say it's a pretty solid aspect. For the Immortal version, though, this aspect will be useless, seeing that you're actually pressing the Dark Shroud button. But more on that later. Next, we want a slick pair of sneakers. Nikes are ideal, but these will do. This is also where you'll grab the armor roll and slap on the Noxious Ice aspect for big hecking damage. Alright, and then some actual interesting stuff. The weapons. You want 100% chance to cast the punctures twice. That's massively important. For second Prio, Dark Shroud damage is just godly, allowing you to pump out thousands of additive damage with ease. Next important thing is the Creeping Death aspect, seeing that it's by far the strongest aspect for us, and some lovely ultimate skill damage gems which we'll utilize in the Paragons later. For the other weapons, we are grabbing the Shard of Varathiel and Masterwork, the basic attack skill speed, which is in the second attack speed cap by the way, and slap on the Bursting Venoms aspect. This thing may look like shit, which I can agree with at a first glance, but it's actually godly since it can in itself proc Lucky Hits and Andariel Novas. The difference with this on is actually substantial, so don't sleep on it. You do, however, need to use Poison Imbuement, but that's sorted via Pestilent points. For the rest of the jewelry, you grab Starless Skies if you have it, and then slap on the Conceited aspect on the amulet. Now this amulet is alright, as Frigid Finesse is the strongest passive, but I'd much rather have Alchemical Advantage along with either Exploit or Unstable Elixir here. Unfortunately, though I'm too fucking broke to be buying gold, and I'm not a streamer so I'll have to settle with this for now. But a godly amulet can definitely double your damage. Well shit, that's the gear and aspects. And specialization? Well, you should know by now that preparation is the name of the game, resetting all of our cooldowns and granting 15% damage reduction with ease. Well, damn, my man or woman, you still here? Nicely done. Let's talk some tips and shit and talk about the different build variations for a bit. First off are the resource management. If you have the Starless Skies, then you want to temper innovation ranks. This will solve out any resource problems you may have. If you don't have Starless, however, then you have two options. Either you run the Starlight aspect and call it a day, or you run Cold Clip along with the Beastfall boots. This is currently bugged and grants infinite energy. It's up to you what you prefer. Both options are a DPS loss over Starless though. Next, I just want to show off how the Immortal version works. To gain the immunity from Shroud of Konduras, you need to actually press Dark Shroud, meaning you'll need it on your skill bar. The problem with this though is that the cooldown doesn't start until the immunity is off. But seeing that we can just reset Dark Shroud instantly via Death Trap, that shit is solved as well. And then again, seeing that we can reset Death Trap instantly via exposure, you now have everything you need for immortality. It's a bit of a bullshit tech, but it works. And if you want to do the tech, where you just keep pulling enemies in when running around in high pits or whatever, all you need is to combine this with ranks in rapid gambits. Because if you have this, then you can just keep evading and use the immunity for unstoppable, and you'll pull in the entire dungeon all. Alright, so that's the tips for today. And just in time, seeing that it's already skill tree of fucking clock, and you know it, baby. We start with puncture, along with enhanced and fundamental puncture for both vulnerable and more lucky hits, because more punctures equals more chances to gain lucky hits. Should make sense, I hope. We then go to sturdy and fuck off from there as fast as possible, seeing that we don't want any core skills. It's then time for shadow step for unstoppable, and as we can just keep resetting our cooldowns, we will also be able to keep up the 20% damage reduction here. We have a few lame passives, and of course enhanced caltrops for nuking down bosses. After that, we want our dark shrouds for the damage reduction, smoke grenade for damage, and poison trap for both increased damage and knockdowns. This is lovely, allowing us to benefit from malice as well. Next, we pick up every poison passive we can find. Alchemical advantage would have been great on the amulet too, but hey, I'm not made of gold. Frigid finesse is pretty much mandatory to have though, seeing that one rank is 10% damage, absolutely disgustingly broken. After that, it's time for the ultimates. Innovation keeps energy up in this setup, and second wind is what keeps us alive. We also have Death Trap here, along with enhanced Death Trap for the pull-in. And finally, the key passive. Seeing that we have a buttload of lucky hit, we can easily reset our trap cooldowns when attacking enemies that are affected by traps in some way. This can be done via 3 ways: the poison trap, the death trap, or caltrops. So whichever one of those traps you use, just attack the enemies affected by them and you'll reset your cooldowns. Shit, son. Skill tree complete. What do you say about checking out the paragons? Hell yeah. Just don't forget to sub first, or else I'll fucking lose it. Here we start by picking up control, seeing it's the biggest glyph multiplier. We then head on over to cheap shot, which we utilize for the big dam. And we also grab some damage reduction here. Fluidity is just great, boosting both damage and damage reduction with ease. We then go to pick up Tracker, which is just a massive damage multiplier for our poisons. This board may look weird, but it's done on purpose because we want to grab every ultimate skill damage node we can for the No Witness legendary node. This one is the highest scaling node for us rogues and is just lovely. Down here we also have Eldritch Bounty, which we'll grab last. This is triggered via the Pestilent Points aspect I showed earlier. After that, we go for Exploit Weakness and Socket Canny for a bit of additional damage. And finally, Deadly Ambush. This is bugged and also works on non-crits, making it massive for us, especially seeing that we'll always keep enemies in our traps. We also have Bane here, a lovely poison multiplier. Now what you need to know is that on most boards, I've been grabbing as much max life and damage reduction as possible. So we're rocking 5 glyphs and legendary nodes, along with a buttload of defensive nodes and ultimate damage. It is indeed possible to grab an additional glyph, which is in the DPS setup, but you'll get pounded for sure. Works with the Immortal setup though, but it's up to you if you want to use it. I'm also mentioning that I'm using Exploit instead of Canny in the T8 Horde setup, as it's just way easier to gain vulnerable that way. Alright, so that's the Paragons. I think we're finally ready to get hecking good now. Damn right. While it may be difficult to see, there is a slight delay whenever you pop a poison trap or death trap, meaning your DPS goes up slightly if you manage to just spam out punctures. So what you'll then do is mainly focus on keeping your no witness node up, along with using Death Trap to pull in enemies. When you've pulled them in, press every button in the game to gain all those lovely multipliers from all of your skills. When those are up though, you're mainly just spamming punctures and making sure that they're still up. When it comes to bossing, all you need to worry about is keeping caltrops up on the boss. If you manage to do this, then you've got yourself a 1.45 multiplier with ease. You'll then just keep pounding the boss until he's staggered and blow him up. For the hordes, you typically need 2 staggers, mainly due to poison taking a bit of time to build up. But with great gear, you could pump them down in 1 stagger probably. Now onto the Shroud of Kandura's variant. We already talked about the Immortal one a bit, but I'm not really playing that one as it's a bit annoying and not fun. Instead, this is what I'm doing if I want to pump out ether. First thing, I'll close all open tabs and shut down all the processes on my computer, or else it'll fucking explode. After that, I'm just pressing Death Trap and Poison Trap on cooldown while Shadow stepping onto enemies far away and evading. Every time you evade, you'll pull enemies in, which you can blow by spamming punctures on them. After pulling them in, you'll also drop a smoke grenade on them to make sure the damage multiplier is up. And now, my friends, you are experts on this build. Nicely done. Hope you'll enjoy it as much as I have. Next build is a fucking gem. It's my absolute favorite this season, and it's the Big Daddy Heartseeker build. A golden build in Season 4, even stronger in Season 5, and what about Season 6? Fuck yeah, dude, it's going to be even more bonkers. But let's focus on Season 5 for now, because in the other seasons you'd run Victimize, but that is Omega bugged in Season 5 so that one can eat a fart. Instead, it's all about just dealing insane amounts of single target damage, and holy damn is it doing that. Being a basic skill, it's automatically dealing a buttload of single target damage, but that is further boosted via Shard of Varathiel, the Moonrise aspect, and the Adaptability aspect. All of these makes our damage skyrocket. But on top of that, we're also utilizing the Cold Clip aspect, making all of our damage cold. And in turn, allowing us to dip into a buttload of different damage multipliers. And if that wasn't enough, we also have the Cowl of the Nameless with all of the most broken passives in the game. It gets so insane that you're able to hit for billions per hit. Now that may not sound like a lot, but you're shooting out 4 of these every hit, and you're hitting 4 times per second or so. So yeah, that's quite a lot of damage. Slap on the Victimize key, passive in Season 6, and this build is going to go from the second best build to probably the best one as well. When it comes to the hordes, the build is just excellent in every way imaginable. But Mr. Pergaming Big Dick Senpai, we don't have any AoE? Well, damn son, we don't really need it. In the hordes, I was easily gathering 1,000 ether even before the hordes got buffed, simply by rocking Shroud of Kandura's. This item basically nukes the tiny shit mobs and allows you to focus on the elites. On top of that, the item has a 100% lucky hit, and by tempering loads of crowd control, you're just instantly crowd controlling them, which allows us to just instantly benefit from all of those lovely crowd control multipliers and one-shot the elites. Yes, that's right. You can just one-shot everything. This boosts the ether to enormous amounts and allows the build to gather even more ether than most of the Andariel builds, despite them having more AoE. Just lovely. It's not as strong as the pen shot build in the hordes, but I'm still giving it a 9 out of 10. It's just that strong here. Okay, and what about the pit? Well, shit, it's pretty damn good. It's not perfect, but damn strong. It has cleared tier 140 rather easily, and could probably push towards 145, and perhaps even 150. Definitely a top 3 or 4 pick when it comes to the pits, and it's simply due to dealing massive amounts of damage. The sad part, though, is that the build utilizes trick attacks. And what does this mean for us if we want to push the pit? Yep, It will require a lot of boss fishing if you want to push high. This sucks ass, but it is what it is. With the correct boss, though, the build is an absolute beast, and the DPS is in the tens of billions easily. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's stronger than the Andariel builds, but just about equal. Therefore, a 7 out of 10 rating is warranted. Pretty damn good. And what about the ease of play? Well, shit, son. It's the easiest build on this list. The skill has a built-in aimbot, meaning you can't miss your hits. On top of that, it's extremely easy to gear for it. You can play it from level 1 if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible. But as you're approaching level 100, it's perfect. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 here, though. And why is that? Because if you want the build to work as efficiently as possible, you need the Starless Skies ring. And when you have the Starless Skies, you want to make sure to spend as much energy as possible to gain the preparation cooldown resets. This does require a bit of work to make the build perfect, but compared to the other builds on this list, it's both insanely easy to play and insanely easy to get going. Play this build, you won't regret it. I can assure you. A solid 25 out of 30, near perfect. Let's check out the gear and aspects, shall we? Starting us off, Cowl of the Nameless is just too hecking good. Running around in infernal hordes, it easily provides us with 100% crit chance and crit damage. On top of that, Unstable Elixir is simply one of the strongest passives in the game currently. Oh, and by the way, everyone is playing Andariels, so it's cheap as hell currently. For titty protection, you'll definitely want Shroud of Khanduras. Pulling in enemies, dealing a buttload of damage and Dark Shroud ranks. How about fuck yes? And as per usual, I'll get the question as to why we are using Dark Shroud when it's not on the bar. It's due to the Umbrous aspect granting us Dark Shroud stacks when we crit. For gloves, try to get yourself a fine pair of Pain Gorges. Basic skill ranks and attack speed is what you'll want to prioritize here, but don't sleep on the aspect either. It can also deal substantial damage. As Pantaloonies, slap these on real good. These would have been real perfect if it wasn't for one stat. Do you see it? Yeah, maximum life per Dark Shroud is dogshit as it seemed to scale with base life. What you instead want is second wind ranks. Trust me, it will make you unkillable. For sneakers, grab these. You'll want one armor roll that is preferably a GA, or else you'll have to masterwork it. I still need to reset mine and masterwork it to get capped. Also, grab the concussive strike aspect for Big Dam and Dazes, which you'll need for trick attacks in the skill tree. Now next up are the weapons, but what about the resistances? Well damn, Shroud of Khanduras grants shadow res, so that shit is sorted. Fire, poison and lightning needs to get socketed, and we have cold res in the paragons. If your second ring has cold res, then you should be capped for everything. I don't, so I'm lacking just a little bit. If you don't have Starless, on the other hand, then you'll need to get all resistance on your gear. It's in the planner, check it out, buddy. For weapons, you'll start off with making sure your Heartseeker is over 100%, then start slapping on as much damage per Dark Shroud as possible. On the two-hander, you'll grab Moonrise along with Shard of Varathiel for massive damage and the Coombringer. Don't have it? No worries, grab the Conceited aspect. But shit hurts in T8 Hordes, man. Also slam some ultimate skill damage into the weapon gem sockets, as we'll need it for the Paragons. For masterworking, prio the basic attack speed and skills on the Shard, and max life on the Coombringer, and this sword won't be the only one bringing the Coom. Alright, and then onto the jewelry. My gear is getting real strong currently, but there's still room to double my damage. The main reason for that is my amulet. With some GAs along with Unstable Elixir here, I'd probably get another 40 or 50% more damage. But hey, I'm not Rob. Heck, I'm not even German Elmau. You should prio Frigid Finesse, Exploit and Unstable Elixir here. For backup, malice and attack speed is also decent. Oh, and don't forget to slap on the adaptability aspect, my man or woman, because it's insanely good. When it comes to solving resources, I'll show how it's done for all the versions in a sec. But for this one, innovation ranks and Starless is the name of the game. Other than that, though, you must imprint the cold clip aspect. This is quite possibly the biggest buff to Heartseeker in Season 5, allowing us to cold imbue our Heartseekers with ease. Well, damn son. Gear and aspects are now done. Let's deal with some important matters now, shall we? But first, whatever the fuck this guy is on, I sure want some of that. Let's head for the dungeon because this shit is stressing me out. For starters, the specialization. Preparation is the name of the game, allowing us to reset all of our cooldowns with ease. We then have the matter of resources. Seeing as Shard of Varathiel makes our Heartseeker cost a shit ton of resources, we need to solve this for all the builds. In this setup, which I'm using most frequently, it's solved via innovation on the jewelry along with starless skies. Now, everyone is not so fortunate to be a low-life scum of the earth YouTuber with all the Ubers in the game, so here's 2 ways in which you can solve it without them. First being Beastfall Boots. This is currently bugged with the cold clip aspect, making it count as a cooldown and restoring all energy back. To use this, all you need to change is to temper chance to daze on your pantaloonies. Now, in case this has been fixed when you watch this video, here's another way to solve it. If you grab the Starlight aspect, you'll get energy back whenever you heal yourself. To use this, though, you'll need to grab Siphoning Strikes and fight enemies up close to heal yourself. You can also grab points in Aftermath, healing you constantly. But the Beastfall trick is the best, and if it gets hotfixed, I'll change the planner. Next up are the gems. I'm currently rocking Dex gems as I'm a Gigachad, but if you're a dogshit newbie, then, for the love of God, use rubies. It just makes your life way easier. We then have the Uber Prio. I can highly recommend both Starless and the Coombringer for this one. If you're a broke boy, then say so, and you may only be able to get one. So which one? Starless or the Coombringer? Well, damn, that depends if you're a Gigachad or a soy boy better cuck. If you are looking for Big Damn, then go for Starless. That's the only Uber I'm rocking in the big boy setup. If you're a cuck such as myself and don't enjoy dying, go for the Coombringer. Tyrael's is also decent, but the Shroud of Kandura's crowd control combo is just way too strong. Okay, and what about the consumables? Because those are an actual thing in this game. Well, I pretty much always go for the Fortitude Elixir, so there's that. And for final tip, I'd like to remind you that the council bosses are weak assholes. Okay, and what does this mean? Well, shit, son. You can easily just delete the hordes and play with defensive gear, and then swap out the weapon for a big boy weapon, of course. That's what I do when I'm speed farming and want to get done as fast as possible. All right, questionnaire finalized. You know what time it is now? Damn right. It's skill tree a fucking clock, and you know it, baby. Let's check it out. Starting us off, we drop all the ranks we can get into Heartseeker, along with Enhanced and Primary Heartseeker. Drop a wet fart on the core skills, and pick up some lovely defensives instead. Next, leave that shit-smelling skill tree and pick up some real skills. Shadow, Step, and Dash. Yes, thank you. We also have a buttload of passives here. Unstable Elixir is just godly, and Trick Attacks too. This passive is kept up permanently in the hordes, but it will drive you fucking insane if you want to keep it up on bosses, for example, and will require ads. Either way, pretty strong. We also have Enhanced Caltrops, which is a massive buff on bosses. Next up are the subterfuge skills. Dark Shroud is just massive, not unlike something else if you know what I'm saying. This channel, if people would just fucking subscribe already, that is. We then have a few damage passives, along with Smoke Grenade for Big Damn. After that, we want points in cold imbuement to grab enhanced cold imbuement, which is our source of vulnerable, and mixed for the massive damage bonus. Frigid Finesse is yet another huge multiplier, raking in a whopping 80% big damn for me right now. Next, we go to pick up Innovation. Now this is important, so listen up, goddammit. The amount of points you grab here all has to do with how many you get on your gear and how your energy is looking, because it's extremely important that your energy never runs down below 50% for the adaptability aspect. Second Wind is also here, which I wanted to have on the Pantaloonies, and of course our ultimate Death Trap. And finally, the key passive. Victimize is only good if your gear is shit and you can't clear up packs of enemies fast enough. This is due to it being massively bugged and not scaling at all with Heartseeker, but it is scaling with Shroud of Khanduras. Okay, and what the hell does that mean? Well, damn, if your gear is absolute dogshit, then you can rely on Victimize and Khanduras to clean up. But if you're in Tier 8 hordes and tougher content, then there just ain't no way. So that's why we go close quarters for more damage. Well, damn, son, we successfully completed the skill tree. What do you say we head on over to the Paragons, shall we? I've changed a few important things here since we last met. We still start off with control here, for the big dam and crowd control damage, which we use for the close quarters key passive. We then go to pick up Cheap Shot, some crowd control damage and defensives, to then pick up the fluidity glyph for big dam and damage reduction. After that, we go for the No Witness board, along with a buttload of ultimate skill damage to boost it, and Socket Chip. I managed to get us a buttload of decks in this Paragon setup, as we're mainly focusing on these type of glyphs. Up here, we have the Deadly Ambush node, which we trigger mainly via Caltrops and the Devious Glyph. After that, we go to pick up Tricks of the Trade, which we trigger via dashing and shadow stepping and Socket Exploit to instantly gain vulnerable. And then finally, Exploit Weakness. Now these Paragons are extremely defensive, so if you want, you can always ditch some defensive nodes and go for another glyph if all you do is run around in Hell Tides all day long. But we'll need these in the Tier 8 hordes, especially if you suck a big Donkey Kong dong. Well, great job, friends. Paragons are done, and you know what happens next. Damn right, it's time to get hecking good, and you know it, baby. For the one brain cell dad gamers, all you need to do is stand in a corner, hold down Heartseeker, and try not to bust a nut, receiving the biggest ether orgasm you've ever witnessed. If you actually want to play the game, however, this is what you do. You're using Dash and Shadow Step for mobility. Mainly Dash, though, as we're saving Shadow Step in case we get crowd controlled. You'll need to do this at least once every 8 seconds to gain the damage bonus from Tricks of the Trade. Death Trap is quite easy, though. You simply press it when it's off cooldown. For Caltrops and Smoke Grenade, it depends. I mainly recommend using Caltrops on bosses and when you're pushing the pit, as it's clunky as fuck and slows you down. For Smoke Grenade, though, that is when shit gets fun, and I'll explain why. The main combo you're doing is shooting some Heartseekers, evading and pulling enemies in and repeating. Whenever you pull in enemies, though, it's a perfect time to drop a Smoke Grenade on their sorry asses to gain the damage bonus on all of them. When it comes to bossing, most of your damage comes during the stagger phases. This is where you want to dump all of your cooldowns. Caltrops should be on the ground, and remember that you gain more damage the longer it's been up. Smoke Grenade, just as you're about to stagger, pop that Death Trap cooldown and start slapping my man or woman. Do this, and the boss should die with ease. If you're a Giga Chad that enjoys pushing the pit, then you need to know that you deal substantially more damage when a lot of enemies are dazed. So if there's ads, then you want to crowd control them via dazes, and your damage will skyrocket. I also decided to leave the most important tip of them all for last, because if you didn't watch the entire video, then you can lick my balls. Don't forget to chug a health potion when you need damage. The damage bonus it grants you for 10 seconds is just absolutely huge. With enough skill ranks, it doubles your damage. Well, damn son, that is everything I had for this one. Drop a sub for fuck's sake, and I'll see you in the next one. For our final build, you may have seen this before. It's the Andariel Barrage build. What's funny about this build is that it's not the best build in any category, but it's a build that is near perfect in every category. You can use it for everything, and you won't be disappointed. If you want to only focus on one activity, or just want to play for fun, then sure, go for the other builds. But if you want the overall strongest build, then you go for the Andariel Barrage. The main reason this build is so strong is that it gains a lot of bonuses from the Andariel builds. And what do I mean by that? Well, damn, for starters, let's compare it to the Andariel Puncture build. In the Barrage version, you're just gaining a buttload of more hits than the Puncture build, and you're also gaining the ability to penetrate via the high velocity aspect. For the Hordes, this also means that you're getting humongous amounts of AoE, like with the penetrating shot build, just a bit less. So, you're basically just combining the best of all worlds. And talking about AoE in the Hordes, the build is near perfect. You're able to bust out Andariel Novas all over the place, mainly due to being ranged and shooting projectiles all over the place. When it then comes to the bosses, all you need is to stand close enough to the boss and you'll blow them up. The damage of this build can reach insanity, and I've seen poison ticks of 40 billion here. Pretty balanced, huh? Yeah, not as high damage output as the rapid fire, but not far from. Okay, and what about the ratings? It's a solid 9 out of 10 in the Hordes. It's not penetrating shot, but seeing as you're gaining most of the same benefits as that build, it's not far from it. More than 1,000 ether is easy mode, and the bosses just melts, so you'll get the hell out of there with ease. For pits, it's also a 9 out of 10. Some GigaChads has cleared above 150 with the build, meaning it's roughly 5 to 10 tiers below the urination build. But I'd say the build has more juice left in it than 150. Truly an exceptional pit-pushing build. Oh, and it barely requires fishing, seeing as you're not utilizing the physical damage multipliers that requires fishing in the Heartseeker and Rapid Fire build. And ease of play and gearing? Well, nearly perfect. An 8 out of 10. It's just as easy to gear and play as the Andariel Puncture build. It's pretty equal in terms of survivability, despite being a range build, though. And that's due to it being easier to gain attack speed in the Puncture build, which in turn means more healing and barriers via Second Wind. But honestly, man, they're equal in terms of both. If you play this build, then I promise you that you'll be one satisfied man or woman. Easy 26 out of 30 points for the Andy Barrage build. All right, let's check out the gear and aspects now, shall we? Starting us off, you must get the Andariel's Visage Helmet. Without it, you don't have a build, so start swiping and kill the diabetic fatty a few times. Also, masterwork the attack speed, that's rather important. When it comes to the chest, we want to rock the enshrouding aspect for more damage reduction. The most important, however, is that you slap on Dark Shroud ranks here. This is due to the massive amounts of damage reduction it provides, and in turn, makes you an immortal god. It's also important that you temper chance to freeze enemies, seeing as you'll otherwise not be able to utilize the Frigid Finesse passive. For the gloves, we're using the Fists of Fate. These are just massive in Season 5, allowing us to gain more than 100% lucky hit on just a pair of gloves. Yep, that's right, with all the lucky hits combined, every goddamn hit has a 100% chance to trigger the Andariel Novas. Or well, 20, seeing as you need both a lucky hit and a 20% RNG. But despite this though, more lucky hit directly buffs this chance as well. Confusing? Yes, but I'll explain it for the one brain cell dad gamers now. Lucky hit equals good. Get lucky hit, friend, For the Pantaloonies, we're slapping on the Umbrous aspect. This is how we generate dark shrouds without having it on our bars. Just lovely. Second Wind is also an amazing passive now, granting us barrier the more energy we spend. So prio that, my man or woman. Okay? And what about the resistances and armor? Well, damn. 2 armor rolls along with max resistance and gems sorts that shit out. But if you have tie rail, then you'll simply just slap that into your gear and get on with your life because that piece sorts it out by itself. For the sneakers, the noxious ice aspect is the name of the game, seeing as it's just godly with 35% big damn as an utility aspect. We then get to some interesting pieces, the weapons. Now, this build is in fact using the close quarters key passive, but due to math, it's more valuable to temper damage per Dark Shroud than it is to temper crowd control damage. This is due to it granting nearly 5-fold the amount of additive damage, which is just disgusting. Other than that, chance to hit barrage twice should be at 100%, and you'll slap on the creeping death aspect real good for humongous amounts of damage over time. For the other weapons, the same goes there. This is also where you're slapping on the bursting venoms aspect for more lucky hits and imbuements. And finally, the Umbra Crux. This is mainly used to ricochet barrage bullets, seeing as they'll otherwise just fuck off to Uganda or whatever. You should also be socketing ultimate damage gems here. These, along with the Paragons, grants you a roughly 40% big hecking damn bonus. For the jewelry, the alchemical advantage got massively buffed. 6 ranks on the amulet and 3 in the skill tree grants a total of 45% lucky hit and attack speed. Yep, you heard correctly. There are so many ways to gain attack speed for us this season, so what should we actually aim for there? Well, damn. From the gear, you should aim for 100%. When you get the Starless Skies ring, then that should be doable with ease. But without it, it will be difficult, and you could utilize an attack speed elixir if you want to maximize your damage. Other than that, though, Frigid Finesse and Unstable Elixir are mad-goated. When it comes to the rings, Starlight solves your resources, and High Velocity is used for more Andinovas and attack speed. If you have the Starless, however, then you shouldn't need the Starlight aspect. I've got an Uber version in the planner. Check it out. Well, damn son, gear and aspects are now done. And just in time, seeing as its skill tree a fucking clock, my man or woman. The basic skills can suck balls as per usual, and what we actually want are the core skills. Barrage is the name of the game. Enhanced makes sure to always ricochet from vulnerable enemies, and improved sorts out the vulnerable in itself. We then head on over to pick up a buttload of mobility skills and unstable elixir. 6 ranks here is 36% more damage, which is just massive. Not unlike, my massive ego. In the subterfuge skills, we have a few defensive and damage passives along with Dark Shroud. It's important to gain as many ranks as possible here. We also have countering Dark Shroud here for a bit of crit chance, which helps keep up the Dark Shroud stacks from the Umbrous aspect. We also have Poison Trap here, which we use both for the increased damage and a Paragon node later on. Next up are the imbuements, where Poison Imbuement has a decent lucky hit chance, along with Enhanced and Mixed Poison Imbuement to help out with energy and resets. This is also where we have Alchemical Advantage, which is just bonkers in Season 5, and Frigid Finesse, of course, which has always been bonkers. And we then head on over to the Ultimates, where we gain a buttload of defensives via Second Wind, along with some lucky hit chance and energy here. We can't forget Death Trap either, used to reset our cooldowns with ease along with buffing us. And finally, the key passive. The only decent one here is Close Quarters. We'll be grabbing a bit of crowd control damage in the Paragons, but as I said previously, Dark Shroud Tempers still wins out apparently. Still damn skill tree complete. Let's check out the big boy Paragons now, and then it's time to get hecking good, and you know it. Starting off, we have control for a big multiplier along with crowd-controlled damage. After that, it's time for No Witnesses, which could be the name of this video unless you like and subscribe. And then Socket Fluidity. Not only a big multiplier, but also a massive boost to the nearby max life. After that, we grab Exploit Weakness for Big Dam and head on back to Deadly Ambush right here. In a previous build I made from the PTR, I wasn't expecting this to actually work for non-crits in Season 5. But here we are. And apparently it's still bugged and working for non-crits as well. We then Socket Bane for massive poison damage and head on over to Cheap Shot, also a buffed node, now granting the damage against staggered bosses as well. We also Socket Tracker here for, yes you guessed correctly, Big Hecking Dam. And finally, Eldritch Bounty. By using imbuements, we can buff our poison damage further via this one. Absolutely lovely. We also have Canny here for a bit of additional damage. Well damn, Paragons are finally done. If you're still here, then I approve of your dedication. Let's get hecking good now, shall we? A beautiful yet simple build. What you're basically doing here is holding down the barrage button and spamming poison imbuement as frequently as possible. Dash and Shadow Step are, as you know, used for mobility, but I'd keep Shadow Step in case you get crowd controlled and need to get the hell out of there. For the other skills, though, it requires roughly 3 brain cells, so some of you may need to turn off now. For starters, you actually want to land your poison traps. Well, preferably, this is mainly used to get out your totems from the Umbracrux sword, and you'll want it as close to your enemies as possible, seeing as you'll start spraying out arrows all over the place when you shoot it, and that's what you want to do. Shoot the totem. But on bosses, landing the poison trap on top of the actual boss grants you an additional 30% damage bonus, and that's pretty good. For Death Trap, it's used as often as possible in this build. You should be able to reset poison imbuements comfortably, and you'll need Death Trap for the damage bonus it provides. Other than that, don't forget to use your health potion once every 10 seconds for the Big Dam bonus, and you'll be good to go. And that, my friends, is all for this one.